All right, welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show. We come to you today on this Thursday from Curran's Irish Inn, and the time right now as we broadcast through the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios and powered by Corona Light today is 4:17. The big news, yes, the Cubs did win the World Series, but the big news locally is today the Philadelphia Eagles, after yesterday saying Josh Huff will play on Sunday and everything will be okay, they decided to release Josh Huff today. So now joining us from BGN Radio, part of Sports Radio 94 WIP, does an awesome job. I always love interacting with him on Twitter, is John Barchard, who joins us right now. John, appreciate a few minutes, and how are you, my friend?
I went from absolutely ecstatic to right in the middle of all the craziness at NovaCare once again. I thought this was supposed to be drama-free after Chip Kelly left, but Eagles tend to like this stuff, man. I don't know what's going on.
You're a Cubs fan, right? Did I see that on Twitter last night?
Yeah, huge Cubs fan. So it was, and it's just kind of crashing back to reality kind of today. You know, it's a weird situation because you have Doug Peterson coming out one day and saying that Josh Huff he's going to treat this like he would a father figure and just tell him more about what he expects and coddling, and then the next thing you know, even before noon hits, they decide to cut him the very next day. So probably tells you a lot. And there's a lot of questions that are still yet to be answered here, Zach.
And what we try to figure out is, why did that tune start to change? What changed specifically from yesterday when they were so adamant, hey, we're going to keep this guy, then today, okay, he's gone?
Yeah, I mean, like when Howie came out, and any time that he kind of comes out and deflects, and I don't think this has been said a ton. And I think the NFLPA has a ton of different rules, especially if a player is no longer on the roster. You really can't say much about that person anyway. And then on top of which, if you're in, it's a pending investigation, can't really say anything either about what's going on through there. So I think they found out, more stuff was coming down here. And I'm just going to assume that Josh Huff is going to see some jail time here because by, all the other actions, even Nigel Bradham, a guy like that, who's had 2 infractions with the law thus far, even though he didn't see any time, or they're still waiting for that to be completed. There must be something that they cannot avoid or Josh Huff cannot get out of in this situation, and probably rightfully so. I mean, you know as well as I do, especially committing a crime, let alone doing it across state lines, is a big no-no. So I would assume that he's not going to be free, and the NFL team's probably not going to pick him up or anything. I think he's going to be behind bars here soon.
No question this is a litigious situation, and when you have these legal matters, you would think that the person, Josh Huff, would be very careful with what he's saying. That was not the case yesterday. Some of the things that he said can now be used against him. I don't know what his attorney was doing. I don't know what his agent was doing yesterday. But how much do you think, in your opinion, that press conference, because I couldn't imagine yesterday the Eagles were thrilled with what he had to say, factored in the decision today to release him?
Oh, and I'm sure that did too. And even as Howie was explaining today, now his story doesn't even really match up. I mean, I think maybe a concern now is people are starting to think, well, did he have the gun on him in the NFL, in the locker room? And the way his story kind of put together, it sounds like it does. So I think if they went to him and he said, no, I never even attempted to bring a gun into this locker room, or if he lied to them somehow, that could easily just be the final straw too. I just think Howie would be more upfront about that if it was just that situation. Like he got himself into a mess and he lied straight to our faces, and we just don't tolerate that type of stuff here, especially when they're trying to help him or something like that. But I really do think that that's kind of the minor part of this here, because I honestly think the legal battle was probably too much, and once they found out, whatever they found out in less than 16 hours or so, or whatever it was, that's when they kind of decided to put the hammer down here.
And maybe we're overcomplicating this, because I say it all the time. You don't need a PhD to break down football. You know that. I just have a feeling you saw what happened with Nigel Bradham. Nigel Bradham's a good player. Josh Huff doesn't have a lot of value to the football team. I just think they needed to make an example out of someone, and that came at the expense of the stupid actions of Josh Huff. And eventually, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, and Doug Peterson probably just said, hey, enough's enough. He's not worth having to go to Wawa and get a lot of aspirin, because I'm sure Doug Peterson had a big headache last night.
I'm sure he did too. And I also, a lot of people are saying that. I know you and I were kind of going back and forth with that a little bit too. Once they started thinking about that, though, they desperately need Josh Huff on this football team. As much as we want it, much as we want to like make fun of it and say like, yeah, I mean he's barely a third wide receiver. I mean he's part of the reason why they win that Minnesota Vikings game. He's part of the reason that he was about to get increased snaps. There's not a lot going on the offense, so I think Josh Huff was a little more important. They didn't do anything at the deadline to get a receiver. They haven't worked out anybody. And they're okay with just going with Paul Turner or Bryce Treggs or whoever's left on the practice squad to come up. I would want to think that, but I just don't think so. I think Huff was, and even before this, in the preseason, because I thought Huff was going to be one of the guys that was going to be see you later as soon as Chip Kelly left, but they really did like him, for some reason. Whatever he was bringing to the table, Doug really liked him. So I think they definitely wanted to hold on to him and keep him. I don't think it's just as simple as he wasn't that big of a player, because they would have done something at the deadline. They would have, or maybe not, but I think they would have pursued something a little harder, had somebody come in and work out, like something along those lines. I really do think they needed Josh Huff on this football team.
But like Jim Schwartz said, hey, if you do a lot of dumbass things, eventually people are going to think you are a dumbass. And to me, Josh Huff is a dumbass, and eventually you have to draw a line, because I watch the Patriots. I'm a Patriot fan. I also watch the Eagles. I see the Giants and the Jets just doing this job as well. I know Bill Belichick wouldn't stand for this stuff, and there's sometimes you need to make those exceptions. In this case, I don't see why you would defend Josh Huff, and we may disagree a little bit. Yeah, there's no question with the Vikings game, he was essential in that victory, but he's a replaceable player. It's not like you're losing someone that's so essential and vital to your team.
Well, right. Like Kenyon Barner can get in there and return kicks. Obviously, Bryce Treggs is in theory can do that as well. And there's a couple other things that you could kind of tied in, but I mean that just speaks more or less to the Eagles roster and how it's depleted and how there's really nothing going on there in terms of that. And I don't really think that, because it doesn't sound like it was Doug's call, from one day to the other. I know that Howie said today that they got all together and it was him and Don and Jeffrey, and they eventually made that decision. Howie doesn't really rule with an iron fist, I don't think you just take, and maybe it is more your theory, well, if it was Nigel Bradham this time and Josh Huff later, like who knows? Maybe they make an example that way. But I don't know. I really do just think that it is. It's gonna the more and more this thing kind of plays itself out. I think Josh Huff is just in too much legal trouble to get out of. Honestly, I think that's what it is. I don't think this is an example. I don't think it's anything else, because again, they're 4-3. They're heading into another divisional game on the road. They need everything that they can get, whether that's, even if it's Josh Huff running 40 yards on an opening kickoff or something like that.
Clearly everyone saw the Doug Peterson press conference yesterday. I'm just wondering, because I saw two tones from Doug Peterson in that press conference. One was, all right, let me defend my player. I'll take him under my wing. I'll tell him what's right, what's wrong, and that. But the other one, when they were talking about the gun, and he started to say, oh, well, I have a gun, and it's for hunting and sport purposes. And then he said, well, I don't understand why basically Josh needs to have a gun. I don't know really where Doug stood on this one, and I think Doug was really put in an awkward position, and it's clear by now because, hey, the reason he was brought in was because he won't have a contentious relationship with Howie Roseman. That's just my opinion, but that's a different conversation. If I'm Doug Peterson today, I'm a little bit annoyed, because if they're going to change this decision and they put you out there the day before, it makes them look foolish. Maybe Howie Roseman should have been out there answering some questions yesterday, John.
Yeah, I agree, man. There is either, and either way you look at it, it's bad. So, just like you said, they didn't have all the information, and they shoved Doug out there, and now he looks like an idiot. Or there is a disconnect between there, which would be worse. I wonder if there is a disconnect that is between Doug and the rest of the front office, or how much of his words actually go through and are impactful in the front office. Either way, I hope it's just, hey, they found out some more information, and this is a little blimp on the radar here, and oops, they made a decision before really looking into it, which is bad, but you can get over that. I hope it's just that type of minor thing, because I kind of got the same feeling, I guess, about the Sam Bradford trade, even though that they said, that he was involved with it and he ultimately had a voice and an opinion in there. I don't really know. I think this is more or less just Howie taking control of the situation and being a general manager. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just where there's a communication barrier, it seems like, between the two. And, well, the other one is just Doug is also not good at press conferences. That's option C, So
yeah.
who knows when he's trying to run around, and maybe we're just looking into it too much. But, yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting dynamic moving forward.
John Barchard with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. See, what's really interesting with this entire thing? Everyone says, well, the Eagles, maybe they got more information. What more information from the report that we read yesterday did they really need?
Yeah, I mean, it came out, everybody's like, well, maybe there was more weed in the car. And I don't think so. I mean, like, we read the police report, like there's nothing else that's really in there. It's an unregistered gun. There's 6 hollow point bullets. There's less than, half a gram of marijuana that's in there. So it comes down to they were in Camden. There's a charge for each bullet. And I think that, maybe just like we were saying earlier, just the fact that maybe it only ends up being a 6 months probation or something like that or whatever. But when you factor in the other parts about his story not lining up or them, him lying to Howie or Doug or whoever, and maybe that was the cause of it. That's the other thing, too, when we were just talking about it. Maybe it really is that Doug went to battle for him, and then they found out he lied. And then he's like, all right, you made us look stupid. You're out of here. You're gone, or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Unless there's like a second gun or anything else, but they really do their homework there. Like every guy has in an NFL locker room has a private type of investigator, or security guard, or whoever. And we were actually talking about this earlier this week too, where there's I think the DA in Philadelphia can no longer receive like Eagles passes or field passes or things like that, because a lot of this stuff, like things like this, for the most part, it reminded me of Deshaun Jackson, like back in 2012. There were some stories floating around that a lot of that stuff got swept under the rug, much like this situation. It was almost identical. So I think that could be a factor in this too. And there's no way out of it, because if they try and fight it, it's going to really make the Eagles organization look really bad.
The ironic part about this is Chip Kelly was all about culture, and this is one of his players that ended up getting cut.
Well, that's it. I said that today too. I think we definitely misunderstood what Chip Kelly meant about culture. Everybody took it as like, oh yeah, Boy Scout, but Josh Huff was never that way. He was never that way in Oregon. Neither was Kiko Alonso. Neither was some of these guys with whatever you want to call it, checkered past or different backgrounds. It was more or less like a love for football and being there. And you start to think about, well, if Josh Huff could become this unhinged at any time, it kind of makes sense about some of them, him not really liking Shady or not getting along with Deshaun. Maybe they weren't the greatest influence towards a player like that you have to like try and turn in there. But again, yeah, it is. Either way you slice it, it's it's a bad luck for him, and really it's not just one. It's a team full of dumbasses. Lane Johnson, dumbass. Nigel Bradham, dumbass. Like Josh Huff, these are all really stupid mistakes that I think you could obviously avoid here.
Maybe this is a BGN exclusive, but what it sounds like is you're saying he wasn't a problem under Chip Kelly. Maybe these actions are a little separation anxiety from one Josh Huff.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I think just kind of being left out, he needed to be coddled. Like everybody said, he's just stupid and dumb and does a lot of different things. So, sometimes you need a follower, a handler type of guy that's following you along there.
John Barchard with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. I didn't want to see them go get Torrey Smith. I didn't think it was worth the price tag for a one-trick pony, and what I mean by that is the contract, not what they probably would have to give up to get him. I would have liked them to go get Alshon Jeffrey if they could give up a third. Where did you stand on that, and were you surprised the Eagles did not make a move at the deadline?
I was a little bit, especially after this, because it came right before the deadline. I was surprised that actually San Francisco didn't want to put a deal. You would think like, okay, it's reported values are always kind of crazy to understand. Who knows if that was actually true or not? But if San Francisco wanted the third, and the Eagles were willing to part with a fifth. Like, I don't know how you don't settle on a conditional fourth to slide, either way, depending on snaps or touchdowns or team record or whatever. I probably would have done that right there. Like a fourth rounder, I think it would be okay. Now, that's a little bit in desperation on my part because I don't disagree. He's a one-trick pony, but the Eagles desperately need that pony, like so much so because their offense runs in a 5 to 7 yard bubble and nobody can really catch. So I'll take 4 out of 10 catches from Torrey Smith there. But again, it's just another Trent Baalke type of overvaluing situation. You're right. His contract wasn't great. And I wasn't too worried about that because his guaranteed money was running out anyway. And I'm sure Howie could have, offered something more upfront, restructured the contract so it wouldn't be so bad. The Jeffrey thing's a little peculiar because, unfortunately, the Bears have him tagged. And, yeah, you could probably tag him again the next year just to make sure, which is already kind of a bad look. And even if it goes that way, it's $17.5 million for 1 year, and then who knows what happens after that. And I'm not sure the Bears would have been like, yeah, we'll take a third-round pick. The best chance for them is going to be, in the offseason, and I'm fine with that. I wouldn't risk any picks when you can just open up the checkbook and do so. Jason Peters, Connor Barwin are probably coming off, so that's about $16 million right there, and that's just for 1 year. Same Bradford contract, same thing. So I would take my shot at Jeffrey now, and I was kind of glad that the Eagles didn't get desperate, even though they were a desperate team for the wide receiver spot.
It's funny. We talk about how inept this offense is, but they still have a lot of season left, and they're still in a good position to make the playoffs. That's the Eagles. And I know the NFC and basically all of football, you don't have those real competitive teams right now. There's only a minuscule amount of those outlier teams in the past few seasons, especially this season of 2016. Where's your confidence at right now with this offense? We like Wentz. How about the rest of the offense? How do they get this thing going for the rest of the season?
I mean, my confidence is completely shot in as far as Doug's going to have to scheme really crazily the next couple of weeks here, And not to say that it doesn't work sometimes. They will get those, 10, 11-yard drives, 7 minutes, they'll go score a touchdown. They got in a rhythm. They were in a rhythm for about a quarter and a half against Dallas, and that's the funny thing about this team, as awful as it kind of feels at some point. I mean, they've been in every single game, and they still haven't had that kind of complete game where they're playing a full 4 quarters, or the defense will carry, the offense will carry, and it hasn't been really together there. I'm not confident that they can. How do you fix this? Because how do you fix drop balls? You either have it or you don't. So it's very limited. But honestly, if they call up Paul Turner, and I was very against all that the preseason nonsense. He's the next coming or next Jason Avant or whatever. But honestly, if you can't throw the ball downfield, Paul Turner looked like he can catch a ball, and you're not asking for yak, you're not asking for a deep threat. So if he's on this team and you can make 4 to 5 yard chunk plays and just deal with that and kind of manage it, even though I think it loses or wastes Wynn's talent just a little bit there, that's fine. We'll see what Bryce Driggs is all about. I'm sure both of these guys are going to be practicing and active because they need something to fill Josh Huff's spot here.
What they should have just done is put the charges of Josh Huff in Nelson Aguilar's hands, because then they definitely would have been dropped. Come on, John.
yeah, geez, that's what I think. Yeah, you gotta, just like Chris Carter always says, you always got to have a fall guy. You might as well be Nelson Aguilar instead of Josh Huff.
So let's get into this matchup against the Giants. John Barchard joins us. I've been reading a lot about the Giants and what I've seen out of them this year. They don't fare well against a cover 2 look. Do you expect Jim Schwartz to play a lot of cover 2 this week or not so much?
I would actually be a little bit shocked if he relied on that a lot. I think what has been working for them is actually just being a little more aggressive, and there's not really a difference between a rookie quarterback and Eli Manning in terms of pressure. I mean, they and more so even this year. I don't know what's going on with Eli, but I mean, if he just smells like there's somebody around him, he's immediately like panicking and trying to throw the ball away. And so I still think that's going to be their bread and butter there. Giants are in another kind of weird tough position where sometimes their offense will explode and sometimes it looks a lot like the Eagles, like they can't get anything going. It's just, again, the Eagles are going to face another team coming off the bye, and honestly, I don't know if that hurts or helps this year because it seems like all the teams that are coming off the bye don't look as good. But yeah, I don't think that Jim's going to change a ton, other than to make sure that Odell is well covered and just kind of gamble in your spots where you can and just go from there. I haven't been overly impressed with the Giants' offense, just overall either. I think the defense has improved, and everybody's talking about Landon Collins, and deservedly so. He's looked really great, but just kind of, well, no, everybody else is it's not impressive. I think it's the same as Washington. Their record says different, but I'm just haven't been overly impressed with the Giants, and especially their defensive part.
Yeah, they're an okay team, and their offensive line has been a mess. And while we bring up, final one for you, John, while we bring up their offensive line, Justin Pugh, a local kid, and I actually interviewed Justin right before the draft, and he was an Eagles fan growing up, and now he plays for the Giants, so that's a fun storyline. But he comes off to me as a little bit soft and a fraud, because I understand you don't root for the Eagles now because you're a member of the Giants, but don't say you hate Philadelphia now because someone screamed "Go Birds" to you. That's weak.
Yes, yeah. Well, and also his game has been pretty weak, so let's chill it out, Justin. I remember you're a Bucks County kid. There's a time to open it, there's a time to shut it, and he's gotten his lunch handed to him more than enough times, especially against this Eagles team. So yeah, don't be a fraud. I'm with you.
Well, I love listening to you guys on Sports Radio 94 WIP. You and James, you guys do a great job. And I know James is now a big-time producer, so hopefully his ego's not getting to him right now. But we always appreciate talking to you, John, and congrats to your Cubs once again.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Zach.